Hello, everyone, and welcome to After the Dance, Charlotte Observer show, talking all things The Last Dance, the Michael Jordan documentary on ESPN. It's got episodes 5 and 6. It's week 3. Took a break off last week with the NFL draft. We were a little out of it, but we're back this week. I'm sports editor Matt Stevens, alongside Langston Wirtz and Rick Bonnell. And wow, like every week, a lot to unpack in 2 hours of documentary filmmaking. Main highlight. I mean, we got the Olympics. We got gambling. We got the birth of the Air Jordan. There's so much going on, and I wanted to start with talking about something that's hung over Jordan for ever since then, ever since the early '90s, is the gambling. It's something that really his reputation does not seem like it's gotten away from. Rick, start with you, going back to 93, talking about the Eastern Conference Finals, him going to Atlantic City. I mean, what was, and you were covering the NBA back then, what was the buzz like in the media? Did you guys feel like that that was a huge deal?
Well, the problem, I think, to a great degree, was it happened at New York City in a series that, you know, I mean, tabloid journalism at the time was at its height in New York, and the idea that he was seen in Atlantic City just created this huge buzz that probably exceeded its actual consequence on things. I mean, like he said, it wasn't like he was there at 5 a.m. Having said that, what made this really odd was the Slim Booler element, um, which actually has a real strong Charlotte angle to it. The Observer actually initially reported that the feds were investigating a $57,000 check that Jordan wrote to this guy, and because this guy was what had drug connections, people were wondering what in the world was going on. It turned out Michael was paying off a golf debt. The guy was kind of a golf hustler, and Michael was trying to avoid the embarrassment of admitting that this guy had taken him so effectively down in Hilton Head. And he made the situation far worse. If he had just acknowledged that up front, it would have been much less of a deal. But oh my God, it was a mess.
Yeah, it was I would say it was just a really big deal, like Rick said. I mean, Slim Bully was kind of well known as a golf hustler around here, and when his name came out, people that play golf in those circles kind of knew that was not, the person you want to be involved with. And to Rick's point, Michael, he was in that Be Like Mike stage, excuse me, when nobody wanted to, he didn't want to have anybody question his image, and that was a big knock against
it. It's almost 30 years after a lot of this stuff has happened. Why is Jordan still talked about around gambling? Is it because he just still admits that he likes it?
He was such a big star. I mean, it's like, people still talk about Michael Jackson, they talk about Prince. He was a star along those lines. And I think people just don't understand. And it's kind of like he said in the special, they wanted to find something to knock me down with. And when you're making the type of money he's making, it doesn't seem normal to you and I to gamble the amounts of money he was gambling. But to him, I think Mark Richard, as somebody said in there, him gambling $10,000 is like you gambling 10. He always has gambled. That's always kind of been a vice of his. And, none of us are perfect. I'm sure if the camera was on us 24/7 every single day, they pick up some things that I wouldn't want, that you wouldn't want about our personalities. And, it's like he said, it's hard being Michael Jordan. And I've been around the guy, one-on-one and away from basketball. And, you can kind of see he relaxes in those situations and he goes out in the public. And it's like, it's Michael Jordan, he can't move.
The other thing that's germane to this is Jordan is obsessively competitive about the most trivial little things. He doesn't want anybody to have anything over him in any way. There's a guy named Lacey Banks who covered the Bulls forever for the Chicago Sun-Times. And Lacey somehow was a much better ping pong player than Michael was. And I'm serious, it drove Michael crazy that he couldn't beat some beat writer in a game of ping pong. I mean, like he would grab Lacey and demand that they go find a ping pong table because he was not going to let Lacey walk through life knowing that he was better at anything than Michael Jordan was. That
Yeah.
kind of stuff at that time in his life made Michael nuts.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things that made him great was how competitive he was. But one of the things I liked about the special, they showed John Michael Wozniak, the security guard, beating him when they're trying to throw it against the wall with the quarters. And he said, I'll give you, 4 chances, my one. I mean, that speaks to Rick's point. He's just, he's very competitive. And that's one of the reasons why he was so great. But that also spills over into your personal life, too.
I think it was Will Perdue talking about, with Ron Harper, they would sit in the back and they would just gamble thousands of dollars playing poker back of the jet. And up front, there they were, the rest of the team, playing single blackjack for a buck. And Michael's just saying, he wanted to play just because he wants to have your money in his back pocket. He wants to beat you at everything, hold it over your head. And, this is going to, I want to turn this to Charlotte discussion now. Is Mike, all the gambling, it seems like, is all about competition. And that's just Michael throughout all of this, is how competitive he is. No matter what it is, he's going to beat you. He wants to beat you. And Rick, I'll ask you, why has he not become a dominant NBA owner so far? I mean, competition is everything to him. He wants to be. He wants the Hornets to be a great NBA franchise. Are you surprised that maybe he hasn't made all the same moves as he would have, the young player would have taken to get to the top?
If you ranked his net worth in the NBA, I'm guessing off the top of my head, he's like 27th among 30. The only way that he can really affect the Hornets is using his fame to cut business deals, listening to Mitch Kupchak in a way that he probably didn't listen to Rich Cho. But and I've got a funny feeling that there are days sitting in that mansion in South Florida where he throws stuff, where he is crazy angry. I know that sometimes Peterson will get phone calls from him after a particularly bad performance, and Buzz has the guy who has to kind of talk him off the wall. But Michael did say something to me a few years ago that I think people need to keep in mind. He said that he had to come to peace with the idea that he was never going to affect the performance of the team he owned ever, the way that he or just about any star could affect the team that they played for.
Yeah, it would help if the Hornets got a little luck in the lottery too, Matt. They've had chances to get transcendent players. They always kind of finish second. You could add Shaq, you could add Anthony Davis, and it didn't work out. And that has a large effect too. If he were to get a number 1 pick, one of these years, or even a top 3 pick, that could really change the franchise dramatically.
You see Kupchak coming in as being part of that, wanting to get better, getting a GM who has that experience with the Lakers.
Mitch Kupchak has massive control over the basketball operation in a way that his predecessor didn't have half that much power. Mitch made sure that to let them know that he wasn't taking the job unless he had that kind of power. And to his credit, the thing that I think people do not understand at all about Jordan, and I've heard this again and again and again, is he's a really good listener. He doesn't assume walking into a meeting that he knows everything he needs to know to make a decision. People find him not just somebody who's open to listening, but somebody who is very intense about what he can learn from other people. And I think Michael has learned that there's something really constructive about backing away a half step and not being so competitive that you're doing impetuous things all the time.
Oh, that makes sense. One thing I have to admit, I did not. You talked about business deals, so my head started going to sneakers. I did not realize that Jordan 1 came out in '84. I did not realize that Jordan 1 came out with rookie Michael Jordan. And I thought so much of that segment early on in episode 5 was fascinating. How he wanted to be Adidas. Converse were the shoe of the NBA. I feel like Rodman later got a deal with Converse. So I think I had a pair of Rodmans when I was when I was a kid. But he wanted to be an Adidas guy. I know Adidas are obviously huge in the 80s. Even look back at was it SMU. I was a little later, but I was I was in Adidas school. Adidas was everything, and Nike was just this little upstart out of Oregon, and saying that they hope to sell $3 million worth of shoes out by the end of the 4th year of the contract. By year 1, they sold 125 million worth. That's just
the Jordan was crazy. It was banned initially too in the league, but Run DMC was out with my Adidas, so Adidas was really popular in the rap culture, and Jordan really wanted to wear Adidas. And I was thinking, watching that special, there's some executive in Adidas or some former executive who's kind of kicking himself, we could have Michael Jordan, and he wanted to be with us. We said, no, we don't have any room for you. But Adidas was a big brand then, and Nike, Michael's shoe it did kind of explode. I was in college then. I was a freshman, I think, when the shoe came out, and everybody, just like when Justin Timberlake came on, had to buy that shoe, and we would go stand in line in Foot Locker. Just like you said, it brought back memories. Standing in line in Foot Locker, the line was around the corner to buy Jordans, and none of us had any money, but you save all your money just to get that one pair of J's. And then you had to have the next pair of J's and the next pair of J's, and change them every year. So you had to have the new ones, and they started wearing black ones in the playoffs. So now you had to get 2 J's. So they had a really good marketing plan. And that was before all the Mars Blackman stuff came out. That just took it to a whole different level.
So it was the iPhone before the iPhone.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
I will tell you 2 things about this. One, I'm glad they brought David Falk into the conversation. David was an exceptional person in a million different ways. He was a really good attorney, Syracuse grad.
Well, that's what you like him.
That's what he likes. Yeah. Syracuse grad.
But David really had an imagination for marketing. The agentry firm that he belonged to primarily represented tennis players. So they totally understood that you could turn athletes into models for whatever somebody wanted to promote. And it just hadn't been done effectively with any other team sport athlete before. It totally changed, marketing. But the other thing that I thought was really cool about the way they told that little story was I've heard so many stories about what a neat, courteous lady Dolores Jordan is. The fact that she told Michael, no, I don't care if you don't want to fly out to Portland. You don't treat people that way. You're going to go out, you're going to listen to them politely. And if then you want to do something else, that's fine. But I've heard way too many stories about that is very old school Southern mannered Dolores. And so that really rang true to me.
I wonder what some of the young kids watching and some of the athletes watching were thinking about when they said, his first contract with Nike was for $250,000 maybe. That just seems like such trivial money now. And back then it was such a big deal because most guys only getting 100,000. It just shows you how much the league has exploded. And a lot of these guys today, like Kobe made a point, they owe who they are and what they are to Michael Jordan. And he really ushered in even more. He took what Larry and Magic did, but just made it global. And so he took the league to a whole different place. And I try to tell my kids, it's hard for me to explain to you guys how big Michael Jordan was. It's like Michael Jackson back in the 80s. They would stop network TV when Michael Jackson had a new new music video. They'd stop it. Like, we're going to Michael Jackson's video. And back then it was like appointment television. There was very few VCRs and no DVRs. You had to be at the television to watch it. And Michael Jordan, for a large part of his career, was like that. You had to be in front of the television to watch it. And that just made it even more big than maybe what it seemed like. He was literally, like they showed, 60,000 people come see a regular season basketball game. It just didn't happen.
BJ Armstrong said something to me really cool, I thought, about all this. He said that the whole world viewed Michael as Air Jordan. And absolutely nobody in the Bulls locker room viewed him that way. He said, to us, he was MJ. And what I said, well, describe what you mean by that. And he said, the marketing, all the commercials, all the hypothetical distractions. He said, Michael was so good during the season at compartmentalizing that stuff, making it impossible for that to get into their locker room and start undermining a sense of team. I just thought it was really cool the way BJ said that there was literally not a single moment in the 7 years that he was Michael's teammate that he thought that any of that stuff got, whether it was Gatorade, whether it was Nike, whether it was whatever, it never interfered with what was important.
Yeah, I think one of the things that struck me in the special was just how lonely celebrity could be. You know, they showed him in his hotel room, he's smoking a cigar. That's the only place I can get away. And the time when they were trying to do interviews with Scott, he's like, no, we got a tea time. This is my time to get away from you guys. I want to go play. And I don't think people appreciate that so much. I mean, I've talked to some celebrities over the years and athletes, and they're saying how important it is to get away because you just don't understand the crush of what you guys media do, what the fans do. And it's hard for us to relate to that. And sometimes we see our stars do certain things, we kind of question it, but we don't understand what it's like to be in that bubble all the time where you have to be perfect. You have to sign an autograph. You have to put on a smile when every person comes up to see you, because if you don't smile for that one person, you're a butthole. And they go on social media and say he's a butthole. And that could be the furthest thing from the truth. I mean, that's a very hard way to live. And he even said that at one point during the special. And I guess the other thing that struck out to me was the whole Jesse Helms thing, because that was such a, it was almost like Trump now. It's like you're in this camp or you're in this camp, but it was just in North Carolina. It wasn't in the country. So that was a huge deal when he said Republicans don't wear shoes. I mean, Republicans buy shoes too. I just remember that being a really big deal. I was at the Observer then, like my second year, I think. That was a big deal back then.
To my knowledge, that is the first time, and I did check with Casey Johnson and a couple of other people in Chicago. We think that's the first time that Michael has ever acknowledged that he actually said that. And I do feel a little bad for him. You know what I'm saying is, it was obvious that he said that in jest on a bus with teammates.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a lot of things that, you know, that people say in private that are, you know, that sound different in public. But that quote, whether he wants it to or not, is going to hang with him as long as he lives.
Absolutely.
Right, wrong, or indifferent, whether that was, what I'm saying is, it wasn't so much that he took that opinion. It's that people got offended by how flippant that sounded.
Yeah.
I think it was Candace Buckner, the Washington Post, tweeted that, you know, he had 30 years to come up with an explanation, and he still didn't in the episode. And is Michael Jordan still just not super active into politics? And he wasn't then, and he isn't now, and he still just he stuck with it. I mean, he could have said something. He could have, yeah, like she said, come up with more of an explanation for why that was what he said, or does he still just not want to dive into that world? And I think because he at the end of that episode, I'm gonna butcher his quote, but saying like, if I inspire you, great. If I don't, maybe I'm not the guy you want to follow.
Yeah, I think we always want to assign, especially the black athletes, they have to be role models to everybody. And Charles Barkley famously said, I'm not a role model. And I don't think you should have to be a role model, or you necessarily should be a role model just because you're good at bouncing the basketball. And in our culture, that just tends to happen a lot. And Michael has never wanted to be that person, like he said in the thing, you know, I'm a basketball player, I want to concentrate on my craft. He's never really kind of taking political positions. That's fine. LeBron is the opposite, and that's fine too. But I don't think you should have to simply because you're, you know, the best at what you do.
We've seen in our own town with the Panthers, the things that come along with putting yourself out there when it comes to these kind of things. You know, there are people who could never get past with Eric, you know, that he was taking a knee during the national anthem, and he's always going to be thought of for that. And Eric is so much more of an interesting, complicated person than making that one statement that it's going to define his football career.
Yeah, politics matters is so polarizing. Like, you can be on Twitter and you can be engaging with your followers, and the moment you put out one political statement, it's like, you know, everybody just kind of goes nuts. You know, they always say stick to sports, and I think there's a double-edged sword there. You know, if you make a statement, you're gonna tick off a lot of people, and you may make other people happy, and maybe that's not a position you want to take. And if he really didn't know Harvard began, as he said, I can kind of understand. I don't want to endorse somebody I don't really know. I can get
that. What got him in trouble was how flippant that sounded.
Yeah, absolutely. And he may not have ever intended for that to come out too.
So I guarantee he didn't.
Yeah. But I was curious, Rick. Did you know Sam Smith, Rick?
I know him very well.
What was your opinion?
Sam's a very fair and honest person. The thing that people either they never seem to put this into the calculus is that Sam went to every single person on that team at the start of the season when he had the book deal and told each one of them in the preseason, I am writing this book. I don't want you to be surprised by that. I am going to be researching a book. His whole premise was, I'm going to write what this team's chemistry is really about. And I think Michael was just so used to people keeping his secrets that he freaked out. Michael did not speak to Sam for an entire season following the publication of that book. He would barely tolerate Sam being in a huddle of other reporters asking questions. Now, it's all thought out since then, but it was incredibly, incredibly complicated and ugly for a while.
I was shocked when they talked about he couldn't go. His boss told him don't go to the games for a week. But when the book came out, because he's getting death threats, I mean, I didn't know that. That was.
So don't even go to work.
Yeah,
he said stay home. Yeah.
Well, I mean, but people at the time, if you were in Chicago, that was a religious experience. It doesn't surprise me random people who would act that way. I think what Michael didn't like about that book was not what he thought wasn't accurate. It's what he thought was accurate.
Like it was all pinned on Horace Grant.
Matt, you would agree with me, wouldn't you? Whenever people assume that so-and-so is a source, the chances of that actually being the source are pretty damn slim.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Horace, like, I didn't say anything. It's just that was great.
Hey, before we get off the topic of logos and Nike, I was there was a day a couple of years into Jordan buying control of the team. They weren't playing very well early in the season, and Jordan, they open up practice to the media at the end, and Jordan is out there running around with the players, and he isn't just like shooting a couple of shots off the side. He's going 5-on-5 full court. And at the end of that, he started playing one-on-one with Gerald Henderson. It went on for a while. I mean, it was no messing around thing, and the players were just so excited about that. At the end of it, when I finally got a really good look at Michael in Hornets practice gear, at the time, Adidas was the uniform provider. Michael had gone to great trouble to tape over that Adidas logo. Even long after the fact, there is no way he was going to be shown on television or in a still photography with anywhere near those 3 bars. And I just found that funny and compulsive, and I'm sure Nike appreciated it, but I found it hilarious that he would go to that much trouble that long after he was a player.
Yeah, well, that Reebok thing at the Olympics, that was a big deal at the time, him wearing that flag. And he had it pinned, so when he bent over, you couldn't even see it. That was, but I mean, one of the ladies said in the special, he was just really loyal to his brand.
He still is.
Still is. That's right. Still is. Oh, I heard the next day after that scrimmage, I read in an ESPN article or something that Larry, his brother, saw him getting treatment in the training room. Said, "You paid for that, didn't you?" He said, "Yeah."
We asked Michael, the next time we got to interview him was like 6 months later.
Yeah.
And I remember saying to him, "So when are we going to see you in the practice gym again?" And he shook his head and said, "The way I felt the next day, never."
Yeah, not 218 anymore.
The night, I'm gonna admit, I did not realize Kukoc, that angle from the 92 Olympics.
Yeah,
that was really, really interesting to me. That
they went at Kukoc that first game. It was painful to watch because I remember that, Matt, because they were talking about, they felt that they were doing interviews. They said they felt like Krause was looking, just like they said in the special, looking past them to him, and they just really took it out on Portone. I mean, everywhere he went, he got a dose of Michael, he got a dose of Scotty. One would get tired, the other one would jump on him. One would get tired, the other one would jump on him. But to his credit, he came back in the gold medal game. He gave him the business for a little bit.
Basically, if Jerry Krause said anything nice about someone, it was the kiss of death. And I thought it was really funny that the players knew that Krause liked the way Marley played defense, so Michael just went crazy trying to attack Marley. I mean, I
Yeah.
thought it's like Dan
Thunder
must have
Dan.
looked up and said, "What did I do?"
I think one of the things that's kind of cool about it, especially though, Matt, is that, my kids, I always tell them, they say, well, the teams today killed the teams back then. I think they're getting a chance to see how good those teams were. And that this guy was so good that he prevented all those teams from getting championships. There's none for Patrick Ewing. There's none for Charles Barkley. Charles Barkley in 93 was just a absolute monster.
I
A
feel like people
monster.
forget how elite Charles Barkley was. They
Oh,
think of
my
Chuck on
God.
TNT, how heavy he is now,
No,
just like,
no.
no, Chuck was insane.
He was really good in the early 90s. He was really, really good. He was the best player on the Dream Team. I mean, he's really good.
People to this day tease people on those Rockets teams that they never would have won anything if the Bulls hadn't fired Phil Jackson and causing Michael to walk away.
Well, I think the best argument there is when Kenny Smith always talks about, the first retirement, and he thinks that the Rockets would have beaten the Bulls in those two in between years when Michael was done. I think that would have been an interesting finals.
That's true.
Hakeem Olajuwon would destroy them, but could Michael overcome that from the outside?
Yeah. We'll probably talk about this in coming weeks, but just as this series starts to wind down, I start to think that the Bulls dethroned the Pistons, right? They were the kings of the East, and the Bulls took them down. No one ever took the Bulls down. I mean, they were taken down from within, but they just walked away. And it's just interesting to see a dynasty kind of end that way.
I think they
in
would
the
have had a lot
NBA.
of trouble with the Spurs in the 99 year. I think they would have had a lot of trouble with the Spurs. The Spurs were really good. But yeah, you're right. I mean, the Bulls, they were really good. I mean, it was great theater for, the whole decade of the 90s. And they handled some really good teams. That Portland team was really good. That Seattle team was really good. Utah was excellent. Those really good teams they beat. They were a lot of 60-win teams. And a lot of great series. I mean, people forget. I had forgotten how close some of those games in that Phoenix series were. I mean, looking at the final scores, I mean, that was a really great series.
It seems like today too. It's not so much. I don't know. I don't feel like there's a lot of seeing the top get the dynasties get toppled. There's a lot more of LeBron and the Heat. Yeah, we're going to break up now. And they kind of go their separate ways, and the next team versus we're the best, we're the best, we're the best, and we get swept off. I don't know. It's just
Free agency.
yeah.
Free agency.
I thought it was really, it was a statement about the times when Kyrie decided to have wanderlust in Cleveland and didn't want to be number two with that fantastic a player. No, I want my own thing. And he goes to Boston and destroys the Celtics chemistry beyond description. Yeah, Matt, I think.
First, I should pause real quick. I should interrupt. Like, with the exception of Toronto last year, that just ruins my argument. So go ahead. Sorry.
Well, that was extenuating
I was going to say, I think you're absolutely right that things implode faster these days, and it's not just free agency. It's how the best players in the game view what's important to them, and it's like I think it's really cool. For instance, that LeBron James understands that making Anthony Davis feel important was essential to giving the Lakers a chance to have a real window for a couple of years. And the beginning of this season, LeBron was like, "Hey, AD, you do your thing, be a superstar. I'll help out when you need me." And that hasn't happened very often. There's just been this sort of things imploding under their own weight. I think it's going to be really interesting how Tom Brady's going to actually feel about being a Buccaneer after all those years of knowing exactly where everything was in Foxborough. I think sometimes things look much better from afar than they're going to feel up close.
That's true. Rick, I wanted to ask you, you brought up LeBron and the Lakers. Do you think the NBA is going to be able to finish the season this year? And how will they do it if they do it?
I will be shocked if they do not figure out some way to stage the playoffs. And the reason for that is because at the end of the day, the NBA is going to have to give so much money back to ESPN and Turner if they don't figure out some way to provide them with that content. Those national television contracts, they're not based on Christmas Day and Martin Luther King Day.
Mm-hmm.
All the revenue that the networks make back, almost all of it is in the postseason. And I got to believe those contracts are structured in such a way that if there's no playoffs, the NBA's financial pain is going to be dramatically worse.
Interesting.
I will have a new appreciation if they play any form of the playoffs, even if it's a full 7 games every round. Like, I hate how long NBA playoffs drag out, but after all this, I will have a new appreciation for 7-game series in the opening round.
I think the one thing that would be kind of cool though, if they do finish with Disney World or Vegas, wherever they're talking about going, that the next season would start in December. Because I always thought the NBA season really didn't start until Christmas Day anyway. So they're going to kind of be forced into that, and they can kind of test what it's like. Assuming we're back to normal life to play December to August type of schedule. I always thought that'd be kind of cool to play the NBA into the summer a little bit.
I mean, could you see if it went? We get some type of playoffs. Then we take a break until December if the NBA season started back then. Could you see next season being a shorter season and then getting back into the regular 82 game, October through late June?
It's a lot of money when you start cutting those games.
Yeah.
Rick shaking his head no.
Yeah.
The thing I've been waiting on, Madison.
Everybody wants a shorter season until the league says, "Oh, and everybody's paycheck will be cut accordingly."
I've been waiting for some fan to come up with a class action suit against the cable companies for all that ESPN money they've been paying for these 2 months, 3 months with no content. I'm just waiting on that to come out. I think it's liable sooner or later. Somebody's going to say, "Hey, I've been paying my $20 a month or whatever ESPN's cost is out of my charter, and I'm not getting any new content on ESPN."
Yeah, but you're also not signing into an agreement with ESPN that they will deliver you. You're signing into an agreement with your cable company that they will carry that network. But I agree. But yeah,
I'm just waiting. It would not shock me. But I think like Rick said, if you shorten the season, players make less money. There's a lot less TV revenue. I don't think that's going to happen. I think we'll see a December to July or August type of schedule next year.
Where this gets really complicated, I was surprised it took the NBA until Friday to formally postpone the lottery and the combine.
Yeah.
They've got to start thinking about how they're going to manage this draft because everybody's in limbo right now, and it's so much worse and so much more complicated than it was with the NFL. The vast majority of draft preparation in the NFL was done before the world shut down. It's totally different now. I mean, and Langston, you've known this kid since he was playing high school ball with your son. I really feel for people like Dotson, who, what I'm saying is this is a guy who's projected to be end of first round, early second round. He is somebody who, he's obviously a very bright kid. He's going to come across really good and well in job interviews. He's somebody who could really help himself in individual workouts and team visits. And I really wonder how much this stuff is going to limit people's ability to show themselves, show their worth to NBA teams, because we don't know when this draft is going to be. We don't know under what rules teams are going to be allowed to do things. Right now, literally, the only thing they can do is take a video call. And I think that's really going to hurt kids who are right on the cusp between first and second round.
Yeah, I think the NFL draft, I know a kid from North Ryan went high, but the NFL draft is largely about chalk. SEC, ACC, big schools. Yes. I think the NBA draft is going to be about chalk. It's going to be about guys, at least Devon, we have tape on. We've seen him. We know what he can do. I think the small school guys, there's a guy, Josh Hall, who's a high school kid in North Carolina, is trying to come out. I just don't know how. What are you going to show him? That's going to be tough. I think the NBA draft is going to be a lot like the NFL draft. It's going to be guys that big schools that are familiar.
Langston, when you say that, the last day of the NFL draft, I was on the phone with a friend of mine who's a player personnel director for another NBA team.
Okay.
And I said, "Have you been watching the draft?" And he said, "Yeah, I have." I said, "Have you noticed how incredibly safe everything was in the first round?" And he said, absolutely. And I said, do you think that behavior, and he just finished my sentence. He goes, of course the NBA would act the same way in the same circumstances.
Yeah,
he said,
absolutely.
you're going to take name brand people. You're going to take people that you have, 50 games of college competition tape over in a close call.
Mm-hmm.
He said, you are going to be much more concerned with people's floors than people's ceilings if there's nothing else we can do to prepare for the draft.
Yeah, and some of the European guys have been really well scouted too. Will probably go as well.
The Israeli kid, everybody knows what he is.
Yeah, they've seen a lot of film.
I mean, if you're a kid like Cole Anthony, you got to worry. I mean, he doesn't have a ton of college film because he was hurt so much.
Very promising.
Yeah. I mean, he's going to get drafted, but
no, I think he'll do well because I think him coming back to Carolina when they weren't very good probably will speak a lot to his character because he could have just said, you know what, they're 11 and 35 or whatever they were, and I'm not coming back to that. And he did, and he still played hard, and I think he's shown enough in spurts that they know he can really score the basketball, and he really has elite level talent. He has lived. He can, can handle it, can shoot it pretty good. I think, he's a lottery pick. I don't think he's any
Matt, I asked a Western Conference scout in February. I said, if Cole Anthony could have turned pro out of high school, would he go higher than based on what you guys have seen of him as a college player? The guy just laughed at the other end and said, that's obviously true. He's, I'm saying is sight unseen just based on what people expected him to be in high school. The guy said he would have been a top 5 pick. He said now he's going to go somewhere between 11th and 15th because he says we got a chance to see, the pimples.
The more they see you, the more they see what you can't do.
There were people who started picking apart Tim Duncan his last year in college. I mean, that stuff happens. But in all seriousness, Cole has shown that he's got a lot of work to do. The fact that he had poor shot selection, and the fact that he wasn't particularly good at making other people better, those things make you nervous when you're going to spend that much money on a point guard.
Yeah, that's true. I think that given the injuries that were at Carolina, he didn't have the supporting cast he was expecting to have, and I think that's probably a very good position to take. If I'm doing an interview with him, I'll say, look, guys, I'm expecting to have this, and this, and it just didn't happen. And then that put more pressure on me and more attention on me. But I tend to think Cole Anthony's going to be really good pro.
Langston, I agree with everything you said, but people chucking up 3-pointers with that much time left on a shot clock, what scouts want to see.
Yeah,
have you watched the Charlotte Hornets this year? They got a guy named Devontae Graham, Terry Rozier. They like to do something like that.
Every now and again they make 10 in the game.
The same thing.
Well, guys, on that note, I think we'll wrap it up. Appreciate y'all jumping on another After the Dance, talking all things MJ, all things Chicago Bulls and the NBA. Anything you guys want to add before we wrap it up here?
I just wish we had told me. I'm sorry, Langston, you go ahead.
Well, I just wish we had more weeks of this. I hate this kind of winding down. I've really been enjoying it.
Yeah.
John Dahl, who's from Charlotte, one of the executive producers, said that starting with episode 5, the drama would really ramp up. And I thought we saw incredibly raw Jordan tonight in a lot of different ways. And if it keeps building the way it's building right now, boy, the last night of this is going to be really interesting.
Yeah, I agree. I think, dealing with the dad situation whenever they do is going to be very emotional. I know it's hard for him even now to talk about his father, so that's going to be very emotional. And I just think, like I said, I just wish we had more episodes. I thought when they announced it, I said they're going to do 10 shows on one season. But it's really been cool how he's done it, going back and forth. And that's been controversial to some people. I've actually enjoyed the time jumps and learning about all the players. I'm just really looking forward to seeing where they go next.
Yeah. Cool. Well, everyone, we'll see you next week, and thanks for joining us.
All right.
Thanks, guys.